Good morning. It's wonderful to see so many friends here. Consider this statement. For the pulse of telephony to remain relevant, it must be faster than Twitter. Or, my learning. While the pulse of Twitter is faster than Facebook, it's nowhere near fast enough yet for telephony. How do I know? Well, as the founder of Phweet, I've got a little experience. I've got 10 minutes to talk you around to my view that signaling the Twitter way may be the future for telephony. I'll add at the outset that this concept may seem a little broken to some of you, so let me introduce it by sharing a story. Well over a year ago, I was experimenting with a jailbroken iPhone and an unofficial Twitter app called Twinkle. Twinkle allowed you to tweet, that's send a short message or a status update to Twitter from the iPhone. It was also tied into the iPhone's GPS, so each time you twinkled, you provided a location-based tweet. Up till then, I've been playing with Twitter for 18 months, yet this was the app and the moment that really gave me the aha, where I thought Twitter had the chance to really change the communications in ways we'd not thought about before. I was actually near here in San Carlos and tweeted, "Does anyone know where the best hamburger in town is?" I must have been near the epicenter of the Twinkle universe, for in moments I had a tweeted recommendation from a local on Twinkle, someone I did not know. It seemed almost perfect. You can politely tweet a question, and anyone may see your tweet and simply point you on your way. But what if I tweeted, "Anyone know the best hamburger joint in town? Want to join me for dinner?" This is a transaction that's fraught with difficulty in Twitter. It requires an almost immediate response, and unfortunately, in most of these social networking systems, there's just too much friction. But let's say I get an immediate response. Yes, I'd like to. How do I escalate the exchange? What if more than one person responds? I've got a problem. We've never shared numbers. I know you as a profile with a history of tweets. I can't even direct message you, for in the Twitterverse, if you aren't following me, no good. Yet we're agreeing to have dinner together. In fact, bridging the whole world of social communications with traditional telephony is a growing problem. Telephony doesn't work effectively when the networks are closed. My tweet example works because it's open. Anyone can see it, and anyone may respond. In this way, Twitter differs from other IM networks in telephony because it's receiver-based. The receiver decides what to do. By contrast, IM systems and telephony put the caller in charge. It's set up to confer rights to interrupt you at any time once you have approved your buddy or given away your phone number. There's limited or little control for context. Cross-network connections are also fraught with difficulty and usually cost. This makes Twitter interesting. We've always had to communicate with people that are outside our buddy list or address book. And we got those numbers directly through friends or by looking them up in a directory like the white pages or the yellow pages. Yet today it's massively more complicated. I bet all of you have more than one phone number, a multitude of email and IM services, and you don't really care as long as you talk when appropriate on the device you want without unwanted interruptions. So, I'd probably get the wrong number or be dumped into somebody's voicemail. As a model, this sort of fragmented channels is increasingly inefficient. Google or Twitter search for a profile may actually become the answer. So let me change my story slightly. Suppose it was the hamburger joint that responds. They're probably happy to tweet their number in public to me. But we still have a problem. The call I make now will be without context, the best hamburger joint in town, and without the profile I provided which said I work for Zagat's. Someone else answers the phone and there's no connection to the tweet exchange which could have been automated based on my location and tweet. Now that's just cost the business an opportunity. So with all our smart communications, it seems strange that telephony fails to provide context or adequate profile before the call. Individually we try and infer it and we often fail. And calls like this one often get ignored when maybe they shouldn't have. So let's change the story once again. Now my tweet for the best hamburger joint in town gets a response from a very pretty woman. She tweets, "I'd be happy to show you the best hamburger place in town," and finishes the message with a short URL. Now this URL was my initial insight into making Twitter talk. I thought if people can share images and data links via URLs, why can't a URL set up a telephone conversation? At that point, I got together with David Beckmeyer. We worked out how to make Twitter talk, and we then applied for a couple of patents. To test it, we put it in public alpha and called it Phweet, for phone plus tweet. This is how it works, and we quickly found we had something really different. In a Phweet-based world, you send a talk request into Twitter. So what happens? I send a text-based signal outside the operator's control, suggesting that we both talk. The signal may be public or private. When the recipients get it, they click on the URL, which, depending on your settings in Twitter, can be set to notify you by email or SMS. And SMS is best. It opens, and I'm presented with the context of the call and the profile of the caller. If I accept the call, then we're connected. No further information is exchanged. You determine how you want to connect to the Phweet exchange. I don't need to know. As the receiver, you decide how you will route this call to desktop, mobile, etc. In fact, once the call is connected, if public, the status messages in Twitter are updated. Indeed, others can join this call by clicking on the URL and requesting to join. The result is the call signal is outside the carrier's control. The call records are associated with the profile, and the updates of the participants are also freed from the telephony system. The Phweet exchange represents a simple contract. Current telephony provides no user opportunity to manage the conditions under which calls are presented or completed. I have no power to attach documents to a call, which will only be made available if we talk. Similarly, it's difficult for me to share an encryption key, which can be passed as part of the URL. For the receiver, managing inbound URLs and thus talk requests is now much more plausible. We can filter for common directory services. For example, let Facebook, Twitter, or other network or companies, etc., control the identity layer for that call. We effectively now have a personal gateway in place. By disintermediating the directory layer, you and I can determine which calls to take, which to ignore, and where to direct them. They can also be qualified by the services we use. This solution actually also makes a mockery of carrier interconnect agreements. It also creates new opportunities. To demonstrate, we have a persistent Phweet model. This is an example. It's like a classified ad or Skype me. The difference is it's not directed at anyone. Each ad still has social profiles, and the advertiser is now in control. They will always know the context of why someone wants to connect and determine when they connect. It would be possible to go cross profiles and networks. Here, the advertiser may cancel the exchange at any time. And note, it would be very easy to give out a persistent URL instead of your phone number. Perhaps you'll accept that the world of DTMF tones is looking restrictive. There's no dial tone in Phweet. We're moving to a world in which the majority of calls will be set up by communications that are outside the carrier's control. The value is shifting dramatically to the signal before the call. Another example. Think about any company that gets call for service. Wouldn't it be preferable and more efficient to get a profile and the context before the customers end up waiting in a call queue? Customers may even pay extra to facilitate the customer service exchange with specific guarantees where they can present the context and profiles in advance. We saw Phweet as an agnostic solution. We didn't see one ID or channel for all communications. We used Twitter because it was convenient and relatively cheap to prototype around. There's no reason, other than a little funding, I can't attach any number of profiles, channels, and contractual agreements to the URL exchange that I make. When the exchange and the signaling fall under the user's control, it's the names and relationships that matter. It's not about numbers anymore. The pulse of telephony can be humanized. If you'd like to talk about Twitter, Phweet, the Phweet API, telephony, and more, I know that David and I would both be happy to chat with you. Thank you.